Hello. I'm willing to bet we have some of our usual viewers back this week because of the popularity of our guest. He's an Alabama born, Alabama bred, but he's been all over the world making music as well. Hot damn, I have Lee Bains III with me. Hey, bud.
Hey, my friend.
Now, I've got my notes here, and it says that you and I are friends. Is this, am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, let me check my records. I think that rings. I don't have my friendship certificate right on hand.
It may be on the wall, actually, hung up.
Oh, yeah, that's it. There it is, right there.
You and I are friends, but I'm still really appreciative that you took a little time to do the show.
Of course, dude.
Big thing is we get to talk about a new album. I figured you'd do the show if ever I were to ask you, but I really wanted to wait until you had a new album, and I'm excited about this new album. It's out on August 5th on Don Giovanni Records, called
Yes,
Old Time Folks, right?
Yes,
Old Time Folks.
That's right.
You've got, I think, 2 singles out. If I'm not mistaken, 2 singles are floating out there. They're magnificent. Anything else you want people to know before August 5th? Because this will release on Friday, one of the last Fridays in July. So you got a couple weeks before we hear the whole thing. Any teases you want to give us?
Well, it's definitely the hardest I ever worked on an album from beginning to end.
Wow.
So there's a lot of different arrangements and kind of instruments and stuff than what I've done before. So that's pretty exciting to me. I was trying to, think about like moving through the record as sort of is like you're going somewhere, to like different places. Like each song is kind of like a different place you're moving into, and so, which I just love records like that, that make me feel like that when I listen to them. And I just really wanted to try to do that on this record. And so I feel like we, all of us together collectively, did a better job of that, or a more thorough job of that than I've certainly ever done before. So that's exciting. I'm playing a couple of release shows in Alabama the day it comes out in Birmingham at Seasick Records. I'm going to do like a solo in store, and then a solo show the next day, and like a solo show the next day in Waverly at Standard Deluxe. So I'm looking forward to that. That hadn't been announced yet, but
How about that? Well, there's our tease. You guys parted ways with guitarist Eric Wallace. You did it for a 3-piece for a while. Did you like doing it as a 3-piece, or do you like having an extra guitar? What's your preference on, or do you like both? What do you do?
that's a good question. I will say that playing live, I did not really like doing the 3-piece at first, because I just don't like being the only guitar player, and I'll just kind of, after the show, just feel like, man, that was just, I mean, I bore myself as a guitar player,
Yeah.
And so I think the more we did it, the more I kind of got accustomed to the way that works. And I love seeing 3-piece bands a lot of times, and so I tried to think about it that way, as like, well, what do those bands do that I really like? And Adam and Blake are so, great together that I feel like it got to a point that I felt good about it. But I will say that, like, recording, I loved doing is basically a 3-piece, is being the only guitar player.
Oh yeah.
Because I so often have so many guitar ideas that, out of deference to the other guitar player, I don't do on a record. I love, honestly, like, because I love playing. I mean, I work really hard at writing and writing songs and lyrics and arrangement and all that, but I love just playing guitar, just like playing lead guitar. And so I loved getting to do that this time, and it was, I mean, honestly, that was probably just the most pure fun that I had, in making the record, was just going in there and being able to, tweedle around a little bit.
That's so good to hear, because you said it's the hardest you work, but it's the most fun you may have had, and that's so promising to a listener. We're gonna Something I've always known about you for several years, not always, several years, is that you write for an album. And I really love that notion. Like you tend to create thematic albums. That's the only term I can think of. Like I have tried to contact you before or call you before, and you would say, "Oh, I'm just sitting around trying to write for the album." You'll phrase it like that. Does that approach stress you out?
That's fun. Man, yes, it does.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I mean,
do you ever consider going
any
into the
writing
studio
for me-
with rough sketches? Or does
think
the
it's just-
maybe that's time consuming and costs money, right?
Yeah.
Is that the way?
Yeah, that's more of it's like an economical thing, I would love, but I mean, in a way, this record. I mean, I've always wanted to do that, because you watch like, what's the Stone? Oh, Sympathy for the Devil, the Stones
yes.
film where they go in
And-
there and who was that, Godard that did that or something? Yeah, they're in there working on the song and they're trying all these different things and they're almost like writing it as they're in there. Or same with that Beatles miniseries. It's like they're just, you see the moment where they come up with Get Back. And
Yeah. It's lovely.
So amazing. It's magical, that was captured so quickly at the point of creation. I've always wanted to do that, but yeah, it's just not feasible, with time and money and everything. So,
Okay.
But this record kind of, I was like, really just because of COVID and not being on tour and having all this time to sit with something that we'd already started, you know what I mean? And that could just marinate and marinate and marinate. I was just sitting at home, and I could like kind of do the experimenting at home and then take what I've kind of pieced together there into the studio and execute it,
Yeah. Okay. So correct.
It's probably the closest I've ever gotten to that.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I've always understood it, without asking you deliberately, and I'll do so today, you write for an album. Like, okay, I've got some studio time booked in a month. I'm going to write for this album. Whenever you do not have studio time booked, do you ever just sit around and come up with a song, or do you just try not to do that very much?
I usually don't book, or I don't ever book studio time until something's written.
Okay.
Until I have. I mean, this record. I mean, I had pretty much the whole record. I had every song I think that wound up being on it written, and we'd practiced them and all that, and we went in there. The only thing that I don't, but I leave a lot of space for arrangement and instrumentation and lyrics, and I'm working on lyrics.
That
Wow. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
That I think must be
So-
what we talk about when you've said those things. When you say I guess you're maybe the skeleton of the song's done, right? And then you're either editing or putting some specific lines and is that what's going on? Because that to me
Totally.
is interesting too.
Totally, yeah. Like I'll come up with the framework of a song musically, and I'll have the chords and the melody and all that stuff. I know usually what the song's about generally, or what or what its kind of mission is in the context of the record. But we'll go ahead and like record the music. And I'll either just have some placeholder lyrics, or maybe I will have written one verse and I'll just sing the same verse over and over again when we record it. And then as we're working on, or with this one, as we were working on the kind of instrumentation and different arrangements and stuff, I was working on the lyrics sort of as that was. So it's like I was still tweaking lyrics, the week that I walked in there to record the vocals, which is the last thing I do, Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm still a subscriber to Rolling Stone in print form, no less. I'm old, and
Awesome.
and here I am.
No, you're a fan of analog.
I really
and
am.
ephemera. That's what you are.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. I really am. And so here I am flipping through it. I know that they had mentioned you online, And I'm reading my favorite column each month to get is the top 10 things that they're recommending for the upcoming month. My favorite column because I always go, they always suggest someone I don't know, and I'll go and listen. Usually it's rap that they suggest that I don't know because my ear is not in tune to the rap scene, and I always find a rap song that I like or something like that. But here we go. I'm looking. There you are, right? And not only your name, but they even included the little image up at the top, which is a collage of images. What did that do for you? Does that sort of attention feel good? Do you pepper it with a nice dose of humility? Well, like that's as big as it gets in the history of music coverage, right? So what went through your mind?
Man, I just feel usually my first reaction is like kind of a double take or like bewilderment or something like that. I'm like, wait, for real? What? And then it's just, I just feel very grateful for that, that like anybody. One of my favorite artists that I've gotten to know and collaborate with some back up, Swamp Dogg, who I know but the listeners may not, that he's been making music since the 50s but writing songs and producing records, but he came out on his own like late 60s, early 70s and put out just some incredible like wild psychedelic soul funk records. And he's a great songwriter, really brilliant. But what he always says is like, man, thanks for giving us shit. That's what he says, And that's how I think that's so perfectly said, because it's like you work so hard on something, on your art. And, I would work, and I have worked on it, and I will work on it regardless of whether people give a shit or not, because it's what I love doing. So anytime that somebody cares about that or acknowledges that is just really, I'm just very grateful for that, because it's that's I don't expect it, that's for sure. So
yeah, you've got to be grateful for it, but at the same time you've got to have a little humility with it. It's hard to find that balance, I think. And then I don't know. You may even be the kind of guy that I am, where you're just the next day you're thinking, I'll just hang it all up anyway.
Oh yeah, dude.
Just got mentioned in Rolling Stone. I'm about to hang it up. It's not working.
Well, man, it's like that stuff is just it's something, I appreciate it when it happens, but it's not. I just feel like in our the way that we're kind of socialized and the way that our economy works and our social landscape works, it's like everything is about not everything, but we're geared to kind of chase the shiny things, you know what I mean? And to confuse value with material reward or success or approval or whatever, And I guess just in my experience, that stuff is just it's not like a solid foundation to build anything on. You know what I mean? It's
That's good.
It's great. I appreciate it when it happens, and that's cool. But Rolling Stone writing something about this record doesn't have anything to do with doesn't really have anything to do with the value of the record. It just
That's true.
And it certainly doesn't have anything to do with like who I am as a person or anything like that, or my value as an artist or anything like that. And just like it does anybody else, or when the many more times that somebody hasn't written about an album I've put out. You and I know this from years of playing in bars and clubs and whatever, that it's like some of the greatest shows I know I've ever seen, and I'm sure you've ever seen, were by people. Some of the best songs I've ever heard, Blaine, were, written and performed by, the songs that a lot of people haven't heard, yet.
That's true.
That doesn't mean they're not brilliant songs, and
Exactly.
There's plenty of songs that everybody in the world's heard a million times that suck, to me anyway.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it's one of those things that's just I really appreciate, like I said, people hearing the stuff that I've worked so hard on. That's the main thing is that I
Yeah.
appreciate. And so when somebody, so like Rolling Stone or whatever, when they write that, that's what I'm like, wow, like somebody, like, I mean, obviously you know, we're certified bona fide friends, like the framed
Like the-
certificate on my wall says, but
Yes, got
but for a
one
stranger
right
who
here.
picks that up, they're like, yeah, they're like, I don't know who this, you know, I've never heard this before. Let me maybe check it out. And like that's amazing, you know.
That's true. That's a good analysis and excellent life advice as well. Before we get into our 4 questions, I would like to ask you one more aspect of your life. You do a lot of activism, I think. I can say that. Is that a fair statement?
Man, I don't know if I do a lot. I try to, you know, I could definitely do more. But yeah, but that. But
You
I try.
use your platform often to celebrate or push activism or try to make positive changes. That's, I think, a fact. What do you think are the most important movements today? Like, what needs to be addressed before the world crumbles, do you think?
Jeez, man. There's so much. There's so much like under attack right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And there's so many people. That,
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
like,
big on the worker movement, though. That's one of your big your heart's there for sure. Is that a good start? Do you think? Just appreciating,
totally.
unionizing.
Yes, I think all that is so inspiring to me. That to me, that's like that resonates so much and seems so powerful to me. Is like, well, studying history, there are all these different movements, whether they are just straight up labor questions or whether it's civil rights or women's rights or
Yeah.
the rights of immigrants or whatever, where organized labor played a crucial role in those movements' formulation or in supporting them or whatever. And what I find so powerful about the kind of like fundamental idea of labor movements, and this obviously, like any ideal, isn't always fully lived out in every way and in every circumstance, but at least, you know, in an overarching sense, the labor movement is and has been dedicated to these ideas of solidarity and mutuality, which is the idea that, you know, it's a group of people who are told by all these powers, all these different power structures, that they shouldn't get together, that they have nothing in common, that they're diametrically opposed to one another, and yet they come to find out that that's not true, that while they do have differences and while these power structures treat them differently, their destinies are bound up together and their welfare's bound up together. You know what I mean? That idea to me is just so powerful, you know,
Yeah.
because I think now, probably even more than 100 years ago in this country, we're bombarded with this idea that it's like what's good for you is not good for that person over there. You know what I mean? So you need to get yours, you know what I mean? And that's It's all
Exactly.
about, you know, me. And the idea is that by pursuing what's best for me, then that's how I'm going to be best taken care of. And what the labor movement demonstrates, and what the civil rights movement demonstrates, and the women's movement, the queer movement, all these things, but labor, it's like baked into the whole thing, is that no, it's actually like what's best for us is best for me. You know what I mean? That we because I by myself really don't have very much power. You know, I by myself can't stop climate change. You know, I just
That's
can't.
true.
It doesn't matter who, you know, but it's like we collectively can, through, you know, whether it's action or, you know, direct action, or whether it's through withholding labor, or whether it's through boycotts or whatever, you know, all these tactics. It's like we can pressure these powerful institutions and systems and individuals to make the changes that we demand.
I'm glad you said that, because sometimes I don't think about it like that, but it makes good sense that it doesn't matter quite if you are black, white, Chinese immigrant, whatever, because we're all workers and we're not getting enough
Right.
of what's ours. And I'm not saying anything about culture, of course. We want all cultures to be beautiful and rich. I'm saying, but we can work together. And I like that. It reminds me a lot of, what was it? Was it the Memphis and the Civil Rights Movement when Dr. King went to help organize for the garbage? Wasn't it? Am I correct in my history?
That's right. Sanitation workers strike. Yep.
That's right. And so it reminds me of that. And I talked to Camille Bennett on here a few weeks ago, and she said it much better than I, and I backed it up. That saying that it's amazing how if you'll just help a minority group of people, that it ends up helping a lot more than that. So if you help
Right.
black mothers, that actually helps a lot of other mothers. It's almost like a trickle up, if you would forgive that phrase.
Man, I think that's what Dr. King was. I mean, that's where Dr. King was in the last years of his life, and I think it's really, and honestly, like learning more about his life and his, ministry and activism is a lot of what got me thinking about these things in that context and the way that labor and organizing around economic rights, and workers' rights translates into human rights, civil rights, women's rights, queer rights, all those kinds of things.
Nice,
And because that's what he was saying. I mean, he was just directly saying that, that's the moment in which he became not only less and less platformed in media, but also that, that's when he was assassinated. It wasn't when he was at the height of his fame and influence and pushing back against direct, segregation and white supremacy, but it's when he started really forging these inroads between these groups of people who were told, like, y'all have nothing in common. And just like you said, he started saying, like, well, actually, when black sanitation workers in Memphis have their rights as workers honored and they're getting theirs, then it's like that's going to be good for the white sanitation workers in Iowa and the white factory workers in Ohio and all that kind, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. But the powers that be are always going to crucify Jesus. Let's get into our 4 questions. Give me a fictional character. We'll go question 1, by the way. Just my little tag at the bottom of the screen, everybody. Right. Give me a fictional character you've related to a lot, or who says a lot about you because of your enjoyment of this fictional character.
It's funny, it was a good transition when you just said that the powers that be are always going to try to crucify Jesus, because this fictional character has a couple of scenes that are very reminiscent of that theme.
Interesting.
But I was thinking about that question because I love, novels and movies and all these kinds of things, but I don't often, like when I was thinking through my favorite novels, for instance, I was like, well, do I necessarily relate to that character a lot, or did I? And I kept thinking well, some, but not in an overwhelming way or anything. So I started thinking back to what was something that, and I thought about when I was a teenager and I first saw the movie Cool Hand Luke. I just felt so drawn to Luke's character, and his real distrust or interrogation of authority, and also his kind of, he was kind of a mess. he was sort of
he was
doing
he was flawed
wild stuff that didn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, he was very flawed, but at the same time, and he had this group of friends that kind of grew up around him, and I just remember really idolizing him, as a teenager, and being like, man, that's who I want to be like him, and now thinking back, it's the last time I watched it, That's one of those pieces of art that I think I engage over the course of my life, and my assessment of the character changes. You know what I mean? And so, like, when I was a teenager, I looked at him and I was like, oh yeah, that's who I want to be. He's the man. He's got it figured out. You know what I mean? And now, I think the last time I watched it, I felt more of the pain that was surely underneath a lot of his bravado, and also like his self-sabotaging kind of you know what I mean, streak.
Yes, I do.
As a teenager, I didn't, I mean, of course, as a teenager, you're just like, yeah. But
that's a great movie, though. And I like that answer. I didn't see that one coming. It's a good one, though. Let's go to question 2, which goes hand in hand with that a little, maybe. What's one thing a lot of people seem to misunderstand about you?
I thought about that, and I don't really. This was a hard one for me because I'm not real sure of like most people's understanding of me, so I don't know.
Yeah, it is a hard one.
Be misunderstanding, but I will say that I guess like one thing that came to mind is sometimes when I meet people that I don't know, I meet through means that aren't associated with, I'm just meeting like a relative stranger or whatever, and they find out that I'm a musician, like they're like, oh, you're in a rock band. They kind of assume things about me, like, and I feel like I'm probably a lot less of like a party guy and a lot more of a nerd than they probably think. So
that's a good one.
Being in a traveling rock band kind of has its connotations to a lot of people, and I don't really live up to them.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of being a musician, that'll get us to 3. Question 3 is what's the strangest thing you've seen on tour?
Yeah, I was thinking about that one too, and pretty strange. And I was thinking about, for some reason, I was just thinking about kind of creepy stuff when I read that.
Okay.
And the last time that I think it was the last time we went to the West Coast, we played a show in Phoenix. The West Coast is so. I mean, the reason it was the last time we went is that we were just losing. I mean, just hemorrhaging money, and because it's like these drives are like 10 hours, and gas out there is often like almost twice what it is over in this part of the country. So it was a rough time, and like we were trying to finish a record, and it was just like we all just kind of took stock of where we were at money wise and morale wise and everything, and we were just like, man, we gotta cut bait, which is the first time and the last time we've ever done that. And but we drove straight home from a show in Phoenix, and I took the first shift. The way that the GPS took us, so it was already like a pretty somber thing, you know what I mean? Because we were like, you know, just like I said, cutting bait, and I think we were mixing an album, Youth Attention, and it was just like an intense time, And so we're driving home, and we just decide that we're just going to drive straight to Birmingham. We'll just take shifts. I plug it in the GPS, and it says, you'll be at your destination in 24 hours. So it's 24 hours of straight driving from Phoenix to Birmingham. Goodness. I'm like, all right, man, let's get it going, and so I take the first shift, and it takes us through this like national park or national forest land type area, which is not what I was expecting. And man, as soon as we get in there, it's like we're driving through like Jumanji or like Dr. Dolittle or something. There's animals everywhere. I mean, there's deer and coyotes, and there's elk, roaming around. And then we start seeing bears. There's like bears running across the road and alongside the road and stuff. And I mean, just right in front of the van, just like darting in front of it. And of course, there's no lights because you're in the middle of the, woods. Yeah. And so we were, because I told them, like, y'all just go to sleep and I'll drive, but nobody could sleep because they're like, we're going to die because you're going to hit like a buffalo or something, So we're all like real wired and driving through this like real creepy scene, and we finally get out of there and onto an interstate. And after on the interstate for a while, everybody else falls asleep, and I'm driving, and we're in the middle of nowhere in Arizona. It's just blackness and stars. You can see all the stars and all that for miles and miles and miles. And then I get to this weird area where there's a glow, like off the side of the interstate. It's this very eerie. It's almost like typically what I would think is there's a city, just over the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That kind of ambient glow in the sky.
Yes, but it wasn't that.
But there is nothing there, and there's no exit off the interstate. There's like nothing, and I'm like zooming out the map, and there's like nothing over there. It's just like desert and stuff, and it just felt very weird. And so that whole night was just a very strange, creepy feeling. And I made it all the way to Albuquerque, which is probably like 7 hours or so from where we were.
Wow.
And by now the sun's up, and it's like morning rush hour in Albuquerque, which is always real weird, because I'm all like, I've been up, for however many hours, and everybody else is going to work in the morning, and I was just driving down, I think it's I-40 that goes through Albuquerque, and I'm just like, let me just get through Albuquerque, and then I'll pass off the driving to somebody else. When you're getting tired and driving and you start seeing stuff, like you'll see like lights that aren't there and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when it's like, you need to quit driving.
Uh-huh.
So I'm driving along, and I look in the mirror, and I'm like, surely I didn't just see that. Like, I really need to stop, because it's like Monday or Tuesday morning rush hour traffic in downtown Albuquerque, and I could have sworn I saw like Mad Max basically. And I do a double take, and sure enough, it looks like probably a 90s Ford Explorer, but like somebody has taken a Sawzall and just like cut everything off, like at the level of where the bottom of the windshield would be. So it's like there's no windshield, all the doors are off of it, there's no windshield, there's no roll bars, it's just like, and this dude is driving it, and the whole Jeep and him are just caked in sand, and like desert dust sand. Again, no windshield, and he's just wearing some cargo shorts, and he is just hauling down I-40, and I was just like, what? And I'd also just watched Breaking Bad too. Because it was that era, and I was like, man, I'm like in Breaking Bad right now, like this dude, and I'm just like, I gotta pull over. I'm seeing things.
Oh, wow.
That was a pretty weird night.
For sure. Wow.
Yeah.
That sound, and just for the record, drug free, of course. There was no. That was pure caffeine
Yeah, and I did have to wake up the guys. I was like, man, did y'all see? And they were like, what is the deal with that guy? I was like, I wanted to make sure he was really there, because
it's the kind of thing you got to confirm. I got you.
Right.
I got you. All right. You're one of our guests whom I don't have to explain our phrase "done up real good" in the least. So I'm just going to give you the floor. What's been done up real good for you of late?
Man, something that's done up real good for me is this. I'm going to pull it out here.
Oh.
This book by Bell Hooks is called The Will to Change.
Yes.
Men, Masculinity, and Love. It's done up real good for me.
Really?
Reading this. Yeah, it's like I feel like I've been proselytizing about it to people, and it's, much like what we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Bell Hooks is like so brilliant at this, is that she can demonstrate how these systems, these hierarchical systems or exploitative systems, harm all of us in some way or another, except for maybe just like a very few people who think that they're benefiting, but even she will find a way to explain how.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this book is really about patriarchy and patriarchy's effect on men.
Oh.
And this is just so, like reading it was so, some of what she says is such like intuitive kind of wisdom, and some of it is just kind of it's all just kind of blowing my mind, to read it. And just the power of this idea that patriarchy, the system that supposedly puts men at the top, she's explaining through this book is like actually harms us in all these different ways. It harms men, and particularly on a psychological and interpersonal level, an emotional level. And she also talks about how patriarchy plays into, you know, white supremacy and homophobia and all these different things. And it largely keeps us from men, you know, those of us who buy into patriarchal thinking and systems. It divides us from, again, our, you know, neighbors who are women or non-binary or trans or whatever, and it tells us that we're different, that we have nothing, that we're different from them, they're different from us, and that winds up leading us to deny our common interests and our common values and our common needs. And so
look for the similarities and not the differences.
Right. Yeah. So that's what she's encouraging us to do. And but yeah, it's a great. So anyway, that's what's done real good for me.
Good. I always love it when someone brings something to the table I'm unaware of and interested in, which happens often. Okay. Speaking of done up real good, I don't know how often this happens to you. Probably a lot in Tuscaloosa, but look at this. Can you see that?
Oh, it's the Arkadelphia shirt.
Look at it. Still have it, still in pretty good condition.
Man, that's a nice really shirt. Good condition.
That's a nice shirt.
One of the few of the proud.
I think our editor of the Alabama Take, T.D. Wood, still has his in black, so we can represent.
I made that design in. I literally think it was Microsoft Paint.
Oh,
I made that logo.
Oh my God!
I made that in MS Paint. So that's how old it is.
It looks great though. It really does. It's got a little bit of a. I mean, your music had nothing to do with Zeppelin, but it kind of has that Zeppelin feel. The logo, not the music.
That's totally what I was going for. Yeah, Zeppelin. Yeah, I was like, I want to make it like Zeppelin, Allman Brothers, and Alabama logo.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what I was going for. So,
well, those don't exist anymore. Sorry, viewers, you cannot find those in the market. Look, I hope people people should know where to find you. If not, we always have the links in our notes on YouTube below and on the site. We put those in for you. Please click on them. What you could do is you can follow Lee Bains III and the Glorifiers on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. What you going to be on TikTok soon? You going to be doing that? No, we are, but I have no idea what to do with it. I'm just like, I don't know. What should I post it? Anyway,
that's where I'm at with it.
I guess you could post show clips or something. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Anyway,
yeah,
we love you, Lee.
Jury's out. Yeah. Love you, buddy.
We love you here. We love your music. We love you as a person. It's sincere fandom from everybody at the Alabama Take. That's not a joke at all. As for our viewers, thank you for joining us this season. I can't think of a better way to end season 2 of Short Takes Them with Lee. Go to his website, of course, and we'll put that in the link show notes for you to click on, because he's got tour dates coming throughout August and then beyond, which he hasn't announced. Stay on top of it. Follow him on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You'll know all that stuff before it happens, and you can get your tickets or ride down to your local bar and catch Lee Bains III and the Glorifiers. It's worth your time. One of the best rock and roll shows you'll see. And Lee, thanks, man. I know you got to get to work.
Thanks,
You're a working man.
Love you,
I love you too, buddy.
Yeah, I love you, dude. And thanks for having me.
You take care. We'll see you soon.
Will went walking and was blown away. Found his finger by my mama's grave.